Welcome to Advanced CSS Custom Properties for Components. I didn't forget anything. They say that brevity is the soul of wit, and that goes double for titles. So welcome to my witless talk. Thank you for being here. How many people are familiar with like components and component-based development design kind of thing? Okay, cool. And then how many folks are familiar with CSS custom properties, sometimes called variables? Cool. Okay. All right, we're going to go over both of those and kind of see how they kind of work together. So my name is DeLuca. I'm a senior front-end developer working at Lullabot. Call me weird, but I love component-based development. So I'm excited to share some of the things I've learned about implementing them using CSS custom properties. Yeah, what is this? So let's get into what we'll be getting into this afternoon. This talk covers some patterns for using CSS custom properties or variables to customize components. It's going to be pretty demo heavy, so you're going to see some examples that maybe directly apply to your work, or maybe they won't. But my hope is that demos at least get your creativity flowing, and you can maybe start playing with those ideas and integrating the patterns into your day-to-day. So now, if you remember the 1998 American Godzilla movie, and why would you? There's a scene where a scientist, played by Matthew Broderick, has a plan to lure Godzilla into a trap with a massive amount of fish as bait. Now the army delivers this pile of fish, and Broderick looks at a guy with like this wry smile, and he goes, "Well, that's a lot of fish." And there's like a music cue, and there's like, you know, like this whole thing. And so this massive, highly specific task has just been successfully carried out and this task was Matthew Broderick's explicit instructions on how to do this. All exactly to his specifications, and yet he's surprised. I refuse to be similarly surprised. So given the amount of live demos happening, something will inevitably go wrong. So when that wrong thing does happen, and it will, to get past that awkward moment, I invite everyone here to yell, "That's a lot of fish." Is everyone willing to try that? Can we all say, "That's a lot of fish"? Is that all right?
That's a lot of fish.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate the participation, or how you actually pronounce that word. Okay. So the examples in this talk are mostly going to be using Twig and single directory components. But the patterns here we're going to be talking about apply across component technologies. And quick aside, if you aren't using single directory components in your Drupal projects, I highly recommend that you do. It's good. It's all the time I have for that in this talk. Okay, so let's start at the beginning here. What is a component? Kind of getting into this kind of level of pattern first. Maybe it's a little basic, but I like to really kind of set the stage. I think it's a good groundwork for us to kind of build upon. So there is a lot of valid, I think, ways that you could define a component. But for our purposes, we're saying that it is a chunk of code that is repeatable, meaning it can be called multiple times from anywhere in the system. It's encapsulated, so it always contains any code that it needs, wherever it's called, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever it needs. And that it takes parameters. So the output can be manipulated via predefined inputs. So the third one is really what this talk is about. Although if we're talking, strictly speaking, you can have a component that doesn't take any parameters, like, you know, just has what it has. But like, it's kind of rare and not super interesting for the purposes of this talk. So let's just round up and say that it needs to have parameters. Okay, so we're going to dive into some examples of what that might look like. So we're going to start with our good friend, the button. It's boring perhaps, but that's rude to say about any friend, much less a good one. Okay, so what do we want to pay attention to here? The button's display stays the same, while the data changes depending upon what parameters it is passed. So each time it's called, the button will have a different URL and text. Right? Straightforward. Yeah. One spot, request info. another spot, schedule a visit. Otherwise, they look the same. And this is what it might look like as a single directory component. Does this twig include where it's being passed this data? And we have this text and URL as parameters, which change that output. So our component, or button component, can also change its display. This applies to any component, but depending upon the parameters we pass it. And you can see here, we have a primary and a tertiary style here. And we can see, like now kind of expanding that example, that this component now accepts a variation parameter. And we can pass it primary, secondary, or tertiary in this particular demo. And sometimes variation will be named something else, maybe type or style, whatever. But the meaning is the same. The point, actually, let me go back. The point is that we're just like passing it a new way to display itself. Okay, so what did I want to say about this? So and so what this does inside the component is that it's going to set a property, usually a class, that we can use to style the variations differently. So here we have this base class, myButton, and then we have myButton secondary or tertiary or whatever it is, and inside the component it'll get switched around so that we have this class and we override with the styles. And I will, you know what I forgot to do? I didn't put this demo on the other screen.
That's a lot of fish.
Yeah! We did it! Oh, you know what? This is in full screen mode, so now we're going to have to say it again. How am I going to, oh no. Yeah! Okay. All right, now I got to find my cursor over on this screen again. Okay, here we go. No, I don't want that. That's the wrong one. We're going to have to say a lot of fish here. Okay, here we go. So, so this is a little demo of this. So we've got just some HTML up here of the button, and we can see the button primary and tertiary. I happen to use the Florida Drupal Camp pink for this. And we're defining, oh yeah, I might have skipped ahead. Oh no. Yeah, I think I did. Okay, great. Let's just go back to this and find my cursor. Oh. Okay. We're going to do some talking. These transitions are going to be awkward. I really apologize. Okay, so let me rewind. So we have this variation pattern, right, where we can kind of pass different parameters in, set different classes, and override our styles to have different variations of the same component. And I think this is good. The content of this talk is not advocating for the fall of component variations. These are great. Using CSS custom properties does not supplant traditional variation-based customization. I think it works alongside variations. We're going to talk about how they work together a little bit later. But now we're going to talk about what CSS custom properties are, which is what that says. Okay, so what they are. Basically, they're variables in CSS. And we can see an example of one being used here. And they follow the cascade. They're computed at runtime, and they can be redefined. We'll get into the details of that in a little bit, but those are all important qualities of that will leverage to good effect, I think, for components. So here, we have a common pattern is to set a lot of custom properties on the root element. So values like font sizes and colors and spacing sizes, and all these like kind of little chunks of design information that can be used throughout the system. Sometimes they're called like design tokens in Figma or if you're working with Designer and whatnot. And that's what we got here. We've got these just a couple different example properties being set primary color, maybe a font stack, spacing variables, like all sorts of like small little bits of information like that. And so this helps us build consistency throughout our website. So imagine that we have lots of different pages and lots of different content, and if we want to make sure that design stays consistent across, not only to save ourselves work, but to make sure that we're actually creating that consistent brand and styling, kind of setting those values at one central place and then using them throughout is a lot easier to manage than having to figure out where to go to change everything. Now let's see if I can do this demo. Which way is it? There we go. One of these days. Okay. So this is what I was going to show here. So we have our two buttons. We have our root, primary color, and it's available everywhere. These are just some boilerplate stuff, so I've kind of collapsed those. And then, nope, I just skipped ahead again. Great. Hit me.
That's a lot of fish.
Thank you. All right. Great. A lot of, you couldn't believe the amount of rehearsal that's gone into this. Okay, so custom properties set on the root are available to use everywhere and are centrally managed. The root pseudo selector is the highest parent of the page, so setting properties there guarantees that these custom properties can be accessed anywhere else on the page. And right, that's kind of going back to what I was talking about, like about saving us work, about anything that needs to get tweaked, we can manage it from one central place. The primary color changes, we just change it in one place rather than hunting it down everywhere and then maybe making a mistake, and now there's some divergence in the design, some unintended consequence, a bug. Okay, so this pattern is also good, I think. So setting custom properties on the root to make them globally available is incredibly useful for all the reasons I just mentioned. This pattern is great. However, this is where we often stop, I find. As good as this pattern is, it kind of bothers me that this is all we kind of end up using custom properties for. I think there's a lot more potential there. Because what we're kind of saying is that custom properties are constants. So this is just my little JavaScript example here, but like, we're kind of treating them as constants, even though they're not. Like, just for reference, a constant is similar to a variable, but its value never changes during the runtime of your program or your website. And we can see that here. Like, this is JavaScript. We have this constant. It's being set to hello, and then we're redefining it and saying it's goodbye, and that's illegal. That will throw an error. You can't do that. It's against the law. But custom properties are variables. They're more dynamic, they're more flexible, and dare I say compelling. So what we have here is what custom property actually does. So we, going back to our root, if we have the same custom property, kind of redefine it, this custom property, this primary color, will be red, because it comes after the green one. It's getting overridden. That's legal. We can redefine. But how is this useful? Like, cool, this is red, but who cares, right? Okay, let's go back to our button example. So we're using, so I think, is this the actual time that I'm supposed to do this? Yes.
Looks like it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So this is what we have here, right? Like this. We have our primary color at the root. Oh, I think I just opened another tab with this. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Inside the selector. All right. I'm actually gonna fill that. Oh, yeah, that worked. Okay. One of these days, I'm actually going to get to my demo, and we're going to see when that actually is. I really apologize. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so right. So no, that was right. I think. Yeah. Okay. So finally, maybe yes. Sorry, I'm getting lost. So we have our custom property here, and we're going to use it, and we're going to redefine it. So we have it on the root here, and then in my button here, we're actually setting three new custom properties inside this component. So this selector. It's not on the root, it's just inside this selector. So border color, background color, and text color. And inside this code, we can see those are getting used. Text color on color, border color on border, background color on background color. Just kind of spread throughout. And that's controlling this one here. So then, when we go to our secondary pattern, we're not actually overriding the full property. We're just redefining the variables that we need. So for this secondary variation, we just have a border around, and we have a different text color. So we already have a border that's the right color set to the primary accent, so we don't actually need to touch the border color variable. So we're just redefining the background color and the text color. And so that's it. Right. Okay, so find my mouse. Okay, so this so we're using custom properties as actual variables, overriding them inside our selector. We're still leveraging traditional variations and global custom properties set on the root. So in fact, not only are these approaches living in harmony with each other, but we're integrating them together. And so this use of custom properties offers, I think, a clear API for extensions in the future. And it's kind of showing which parts are meant to be changed and which parts should be a little bit more stable. So yeah, so that works. That's interesting, but it's not too much different than kind of just like overriding the CSS itself, like we're kind of used to. But let's say you have a landing page type where editors can configure which components appear in a list and in which order. Maybe you're using Layout Builder or Paragraphs or Drupal Canvas, something like that, Page Builder. So editors can place components into sections, which can have either a light or a dark background. So the components inside need to be styled to accommodate both color schemes. And custom properties offer a nice way to solve this. I actually used this pattern on a recent project for App State University. It was really handy. So remember that custom properties follow the cascade. So we can redefine the property on a component parent and have that value flow down. And now I'm going to go back to my demo. There we go. Okay, so here's kind of what we were seeing in the image. We've got like, just some basic lorem ipsum components, a little image, some text, and alternating color schemes all the way down the page. The HTML, the important stuff is down here in the sections. We're kind of controlling the color with this data background property. Could be anything, but that's kind of what we're using here. And they're alternating light, dark. Inside, it's not important what's inside the component for these purposes, but the component is inside each section. And then for the CSS, kind of hidden the stuff that's just kind of more boilerplate. We're kind of using the same pattern that we were doing last time. We just have we're setting the background and text color properties on this data attribute, and then for giving it just the broadest possible sense. So this is being set not on like either light or dark. This just applies to anything that has that property. And this is where we're going to apply those variables to our properties, text color and background color. And so now this is actually correct for the light. We kind of scroll up here. We still have our root variables, the background color, light and dark, like that can all be still defined. And then down here at the dark, we're just overriding those two. And so just with this little snippet, we can kind of create this alternating effect that kind of just gives you the correct colors throughout. And this is like a simplified example. Like for some more complex stuff, you might need to redefine, like take in these properties inside the component. But they'll be available to you, so you can do that. Okay. Go back to that. Okay. So, as we kind of saw, the code is kind of, I think, simple and clear. And if we need to support a new background color, which I don't know if anyone's ever had that experience where there's like a new thing that needs to be added. Yeah. All we need to do is redefine the custom properties in a new selector. And there's no like extra overhead. So, okay. We kind of talked about traditional component variations and custom properties for a little bit. And so I just want to take a minute to kind of, I don't know, there's always like a lot of art to this stuff, front-end world, as well as science. So like, I figured I'd just like share my thoughts or kind of where I've come out in like how you kind of utilize or can utilize those two concepts. So I think of these two as separate, quasi-related things, custom properties and variations. So both are used to customize components, that's the related part. And then custom properties, they target a single property, whereas a variation is a collection of properties, which can themselves contain custom properties. And both are a nice API surface for other developers to leverage. So I reach for a variation when there's like a larger function a component needs to achieve. Like this whole display needs to be tweaked. And I reach for custom properties when I need more granular control. Like this font needs to be a different type. So both of these, as we've seen, can and do work well together. So I think this pattern that I've kind of been showcasing here a bit really shines when the system that you're working with gets more complicated. And I don't know, I haven't worked with any system that has gotten less complicated, at least not without like a lot of effort and buy-in from folks. So it's nice if you have a pattern that grows with the complexity of your site. So we'll do a little thought experiment. So imagine you have a component that needs 3 rem padding on either side. So no problem, right? You're done before you wake up. Boom. Now imagine that we need that 3 rem of padding on the left and right for every component, and that value should be consistent across all components, right? This is a unified system. All of them should have the same amount of padding. And there's 50 components. Okay. It's a bit of legwork, but no problem. We just add a custom property to the root, our component spacing, and apply it to every element. Okay. This is just like, I'm not going to do all 50, but like, okay, here's a component, here's another component. We're adding the padding. It's not still pretty dry, but like, okay, we're referencing the same value so that if it changes in the future, we can do that. Okay, so now imagine that this padding treatment is only for landing pages. On text-heavy pages, the components have less room, so they only need to have 2 rem of padding. No problem. You want to stay consistent, so you add a variation and you override the component. I know this might be a little small to see, but I'll try to. Is this? Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I might even be able to. Okay. So you need to do that for all 50 components, and that feels kind of heavy for such a small change, but it does work. Now imagine that all of these components can also appear in a sidebar. So that's even more space constrained, so components there can only have one rem of padding. No problem. There's another variation for all 50 components for the same little size change, but it's good to throw in another, throw it on the pile. You're already deep in. Let's move on. Okay, so that's like we keep adding variables to the root. We keep adding more variations. Our boilerplate is growing. So now imagine that for some of these spots, the template isn't always aware of its context, meaning we can't pass in the right variation for every place a component will render. I don't know if anyone else has had this experience. So, not great, right? That's a little hard, but still doable, right? No problem. You target a unique selector that wraps the components that can't get the right variation and add it to your variation styles. All right, like this. All right, maybe this is the variation here, and then like maybe you have whatever, some sidebar or some place where you just Drupal can't give you what you need, and you throw in a selector that can match that spot. This is not pretty, but it does work. The problem is you have to do that for every one of the 50 components. Your code is starting to get bloated and messy. The chance for styles to end up where they shouldn't and other display bugs just shot up. Now imagine that this variation dead zone affects every component placement type we've coded. Landing pages, text pages, and sidebars. So that means you need to manage this extra code for every variation. So that bit of extra boilerplate code is now ballooning across all 50 components. So now imagine that this site will continue to change. More components, more places to put them, more variations, more and more and more. And now, imagine that all this is real. Like, yeah, I don't know. It might happen. It happens. Okay. So
That's a lot of fish.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
A lot of fish. I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, no, this is a bad time. Okay, so how can this pattern help? So this, you could do all that, or you could set a few custom properties on every component once, define a default on the root, and then redefine them on a parent for each placement type. And it kind of bypasses a lot of that issue, not all of it. So maybe I'll switch over to the demo here so folks can see. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Okay. So here is, where's my mouse? Great. Okay. So we have this, I've just kind of like mocked up a landing page, and then a text page, and a sidebar. They're not real, but like we can see that we've got just some components with white space on either side, right? And kind of get this down. These aren't necessary. This is just boilerplate. Okay, and so we've got on the component, we're setting the inline padding, the left and right padding, to component spacing, right? And on the root, we're defining component spacing as 3 rem. We're going to say that that's our default. So we can see here that, well, we can't actually see, but this is 3 rem on either side. So that looks right. That's for the landing page. Now we get to the text page. Okay, that's also 3 rem. This should be 2. And down here for the sidebar, it's very apparent, like that's 3. It's very squinched. But if we just kind of just redefine this, run that. This stays the same. Now we have 2 rem and 1 rem all the way down. And this is just works independently of any other kind of limitation. As long as you can get a selector and a spot where this makes sense, it's just kind of solved in one fell swoop. Okay. Let's go back. Okay. So, because custom properties are computed at runtime, they can be included in a calc function like any other value. And they can be really useful when there's a set of related values that share a common base. So you can see here we've got a spacing base custom property, and down here on the inline we're dividing it by 2. So these spacings are related, and we're just kind of pulling them together through math. So that's the kind of example that I have here is if you want to think about a table that has different display modes, and we have different amounts of space that can be set for each cell. And kind of walk through this. The HTML it's basic table, so I've kind of minimized it. But we can see here that we've got these controls for the user, and we can go to tight, and we can go to large, and that's a little preposterous, but hey, maybe people want that. I don't know. And how we're doing this is with one variable. So if we look, we'll look at the JavaScript real quick since it's small. All we're doing, kind of interacting with custom properties, is we're just setting a style property inline, this spacing base, and we're giving it the value from this form control. So the form control's value is let's say it's 1 rem, 2 rem, 3 rem, but something like that, right? And so whenever you change this, it just rewrites the custom property at the top there, and since it follows the cascade, it'll flow down through everything. And so let's take a look at this CSS real quick. We have this padding for the block in the inline. The inline is just using the base variable, while the other, the width or the block level is adding another 5 rem to it, kind of give it that extra space. And the data here, doing something similar, dividing that by 2, kind of keeping that spacing relationship. And I think that's it. Except for that one. Okay. I gotta switch this back. Whoop. Nope. Okay. All right. So, custom properties provide, I think, a compelling API surface for others to customize your components in flexible ways that you still define. But all flexibility comes with a cost. We know this. So misuse of the system can and will occur given enough time and attention. So this won't solve your life, but one way custom properties can help is by type checking. So you actually do have more control over a custom property by defining it with the @property method. And this is what that looks like. So instead of just dash dash at the root or wherever, you can use this notation. And this actually goes outside any selector. So it's a little more verbose, but we have more control, and it has some advantages. So firstly, like I said, it's not set inside a scope like root or another selector. You're just registering the property, and so then it can be redefined anywhere or nowhere. And it's not tied to a single place. So second, you can tell the property which types it will accept via the syntax property. So we're just showing a single type here, angle, but multiple can be defined. So it could take angle and pixel and color and maybe, I don't know, as many as you want. So any value can be assigned to the property that are, any value assigned to the property that are of a different type will be discarded. So if you assign a property that isn't an angle to this, it will not take it. And then an error will be shown in the dev tools. So this is not possible when you define a custom property otherwise. It can't know what types it will accept, so it just defaults to accepting any. So that means that you can pass data to something that won't accept that type. And we'll kind of see what that means in a moment. This is especially useful if you're trying to create a pit of success for other developers. And I think it gets more useful the larger the system is and the larger the user base is. Thinking like a design system, whatnot. So there's two other property aspects here, this inherits and this initial value. So inherits is true by default, and it just controls whether children will get this custom property passed down if you set it on a parent, which is kind of the way inheritance works in CSS. Do you want that on? I've actually never personally found like a use case for turning this off. Like it seems really interesting and potentially useful. I just haven't come across that. So if anyone has a use case for that, I would love to hear it. Finally, there's this initial value, and it's what it says on the tin. So whenever you set this to, whenever you use this property, that's what it will be unless it's redefined. Okay. So now, let's go back to the demo. I can show you what this looks like. Oh, this is just a blank page, though. That's not useful. Let's go. Here we go. Okay, so this is my demo for this. Imagine we have this little doodad that the client wants to add to lots of different components. And it says new, it gets this hover, it's on an angle. Right, so we've created this custom property where the syntax is angle, inherits, and its initial value is 0. That's exactly what we saw. So this one works. This one, it's not at the angle. It should be tilted to the other end, but it's not. So let's see what's going on there. We scroll through this boilerplate. We have just some alignment stuff to kind of in our boilerplate here. But if we get down to the code here, so for the left variation, we have a rotation of negative 45 degrees. And we've kind of overridden the 0. And that's why it has this tilt. So that's nice. But here, the rotation is set to 45 pixels. And that was not defined as a value, or valid value. So only an angle, not a pixel. And so if we look at this, if we inspect this, and scroll down, oof, that anti-aliasing is rough. You can see here that the, maybe you can't actually. Can anyone see this? Let me make this bigger.
Can I make it bigger?
All right, let's make this. Okay. Except that I clicked away from what it was supposed to be. All right, hold on. There we go. So our rotation property, we get the error. Invalid property value, expected an angle. So that's like really useful, I think, when we're trying to surface issues and like kind of the way the system is intended to be used, kind of create that that happy path as much as possible. I think that's a pretty helpful error message as well. Okay. So what just happened? We learned about some custom properties. So custom properties are CSS variables. They're not a replacement for component variations. They work in harmony with variations. We can use them globally to create consistency. They can be redefined to save effort, and they can really shine at scale. They can be used in math, and they can be type checked. And that's it. Thank you so much. Any Any questions? Yes, Aubrey.
Yeah, I saw when you were defining the app property, you had the inherits true, and that you said that was the default. Do you have to actually specify it if it's the default in there, or how does that work?
So the question was whether the inherits property has to be set, even though it's the default of true. And the answer, as far as I understand, is yes. You always have to set that property, even though that is the default. I think it's the default, meaning that like if you don't use app property, that is what your custom properties will have. They will always inherit. But if you do specify it with app property, you do have to say whether it inherits or not.
Can properties still not be used in media queries in that ilk?
Yeah, so the question was, can custom properties still not be used inside media queries and the like? The answer right now is yes, or that could be confusing. Yes, they cannot be used in media queries and whatnot. The standard seems to be fairly close to shipping this year. There we go. Yeah, soon, looks like, but not yet.
That was so nice.
Yeah. Be very nice. Although post CSS, you can like add some tooling to kind of make features.
If you went to my top,
Yeah. Yes.
So does that mean they also can't be used in container queries?
The question was if they can also no longer be used, currently not be used in container queries, and yes, they cannot be used in container queries until soon. Yeah.
Yeah, style queries are also coming early this year.
There we go. Style queries are also coming earlier this year. So, thank you, Andy. Yeah. Yes.
It's been a long time since I have tried to do stuff with CSS properties, custom properties, and components. And I seem to remember, and I can't remember what the exact condition was, some gotchas where, like, it was inheriting, but it was inheriting something that I wasn't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of any specific examples where this breaks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The question was like, can I think of any examples where this kind of pattern breaks? One off the top of my head is when you nest components into each other. Like if you set like some global properties on them that like, well, to kind of use the examples that I was giving were kind of white space. Maybe those shouldn't have that white space inside when it's nested inside. Maybe that should just be a top level. Or maybe you've used a namespace that's a little too common, and now you're inheriting something that you don't expect because like they are coming through. So I think in both of those situations, I would like override the custom property like underneath it. That's like one way that you still have access to override or redefine it if they're nested, or if they're the namespace. You know, the broader they are, like if I'm setting them on a root, I always want to like namespace them pretty aggressively, like to the theme or the client or something like that, so that they're not going to be confused for something else inside the system. And then, you know, even when it's inside a selector, that could, you know, the naming might be an issue. Yes?
So I saw one of your patterns is you were putting the properties, CSS variables inside of a selector instead of setting them on the root. But you were only putting the CSS variable in the selector. Wouldn't it be easier to put it defined on the root, like background, primary, background, secondary on the root, and then just do background color and then just find it there? Because if you would have to change it across multiple places, you could change it once in the root versus other places. Maybe that's just a code preference. But.
Yeah, so the question is like, I'm just defining some custom properties inside a selector, and wouldn't it be better and more consistent to define that on the root and then use it inside? So if I understand correctly, I think part of it might be just like my examples for brevity, but like the pattern I like to use is to like define all the like constant tokens on the root, and then have another custom property inside the selector if I need it to be redefined inside that property that references the root property.
Okay.
So then when it's redefined, I'm redefining it with yet another root property, but like that that custom property inside the selector, that's what allows it to be scoped to just that component, because
Okay.
I don't want it to leak
Yeah.
everywhere.
Okay, makes sense.
Just about at time, but any more questions? Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
That's a lot of fish.
Yeah.